rich beyond our wildest dreams.
Hi, this is the Disenfranchised Podcast, that podcast all about those franchises of one, those films that fancy themselves full-fledged franchises before falling flat on their face after the first film. I am your host, Stephen Foxworthy, just asking that you please push it! And joining me, as always, is my co-host, the man who may or may not die in front of an elevator. It's Tucker. Hey, Tucker.
Hi, Steven. How's it going? Was that supposed to be salt and pepper there at the beginning?
It was supposed to be, yeah. I'm very bad at most things, so it probably didn't come across.
I just wanted to confirm. I didn't say it was bad.
You didn't say it was good either.
No, I'm pretty neutral on it. I thought it was all right. I just wanted to confirm for anyone who was like, was that what I thought it was? Apparently, yes.
That was the intention behind the choice. Which means that our third guest has already figured it out and is on his way. He is the father of disco. We call him Daddy Disco sometimes. From the Specter Cinema Club. Please welcome back to the podcast, Mr. DeVaughn Taylor. DeVaughn, how we doing?
Push it. There you go.
Push it real good. There it is.
You did the beat already. That was gonna be my little intro.
I love it.
You did the beat for me. I'm doing fantastic.
I can put them together in post if you want. I can put them together. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, just drop it right here.
Right
okay.
There.
There it is.
1 minute 35 seconds. At least I'm not bleeping out. Damn it!
Did it to yourself.
Oh my! I can't believe I've done this.
Did it to yourself.
I did it. I figured since I was already at a point where I was going to have to edit something, I might as well drop one just for funsies.
I mean, you may as well, since you're already here.
I'm already here, so what am I going to do?
And this is an episode like 2 years in the making, because once upon a time, DeVaughn, you were like, hey, I really want to cover this movie. And I was like, you're on the schedule. And then I went to the hospital and like cleared our guest deck. We brought it up the last time you were here when we talked about Hancock. It's one of your favorite subgenres of film. DeVaughn, what movie are we talking about today?
We are talking about 2009's Push, not to be confused with on Wikipedia. 2009 film directed by Lee Daniels, previously titled Push, which was apparently the name of Precious before Precious was a movie.
Based on the novel Push by Sapphire, right? This
movie,
not based on the novel Push by Sapphire.
No, not at all. And yeah, because this is I had two films on my brain when I learned of your podcast, Disenfranchised, and this was one of them. And the other one, I'm pretty sure, is still yet to be covered, Jumper. So when that is covered, I reserve my spot for that. But
I am putting you on the list now. It's not scheduled, but when it is, it's gonna be you.
These were my two movies that I was like, if I get to go on Disenfranchised, I want to either talk Push or Jumper. So Jumper, that's gonna come later. But I am very happy to be talking this movie today.
First of all, it was a foregone conclusion. It took us longer than we expected it to, and that's on me. But no, it was always going to happen. And now it's happened twice. So,
yeah.
I think we've actually got a couple more scheduled episodes with you on the books. So,
alternative superheroes, that's my corner over here.
It is. I think we have you down for a traditional superhero as well, but we can discuss that off mic. But yes, so you're absolutely, when we step back from that ledge, my friend, we will absolutely give you a call. But yes, we are covering the 2009, good Lord, it's early, film Push, directed by Paul McGuigan, written by Dave Borla, and starring Chris Evans, Dakota Fanning, Camilla Bell, Jaimin Hansu, Joel Gretsch, Ming-Na Wen, Cliff Curtis, Nate Mooney, Corey Stoll, Scott Michael Campbell, Neil Jackson, Maggie Siff, many, many, many others. What a cast. What a picture. Gentlemen, we did it. We're here. We're talking Push.
We did it, you guys. We
did it.
We're all here.
The pushing is happening at long last.
We're going to talk about it. That's rad.
Man. Yeah, what a cast in general. Like, this is It is such a very fascinating ensemble, and especially like at the time it came out, this was a lot of people like kind of like on their bubble of bursting out. Funny enough, I think Dakota Fanning is the biggest star at the time of this movie. Like she has
Yes.
been the longest working actress up to this point in the movie,
Right.
which is super crazy because Dakota Fanning, I learned not too long ago, Dakota Fanning is only 2 months older than me.
Oh,
And just because of like how long she's been in the industry, I was always convinced that she was like much older than me for some reason. And then I was like, no, when I was a kid, she was also a kid still making these movies.
right.
So kind of crazy that she's only 30 and she has had such a storied history in the industry. And again, like her at the time of only being like 12 or 13 being the biggest star of this movie is kind of hilarious.
It is absolutely wild. I remember when this came out, I saw the trailers for it, and I was like, okay, it's Johnny Storm and Dakota Fanning. Like, I didn't really even register who Chris Evans was at that point. It was just Johnny Storm and Dakota Fanning. Like, Dakota Fanning was the name I knew. I don't think I knew Jaimin Hansu was in the movie, but I did, of course, know him from Gladiator and several other films as well.
If I may say about Chris Evans in this movie, and this will definitely contain spoilers for Deadpool and Wolverine. I would have taken this dude over Johnny Storm, honestly, just for the deeper reference. Like,
It's
how
kind
rad
of a
would that
shame.
have been?
It's kind of a shame Disney didn't own the rights to this. Otherwise, it probably would have been.
That would
They
be
could have gotten it
hilarious.
easy.
That would be hilarious. Like it'd be happening, and so many people in the audience would be like, "Wait, what is he doing with his hands right now?"
Yeah, exactly.
Because this is a movie that almost fully does not exist. Like this movie, I remember the trailer for it, and I mean, I know it's a thing that happened, but if I think if we like go out on the street and poll like 20 people, maybe 2 of them will know that this movie was a thing.
It's
Like,
one of those movies that I was like trying to remember the first time I saw this, and I don't know. Like Push has just kind of always been there in my life. I don't know when it was put in front of my eyes, but I have always known it. So I'm like, I don't know if I actually saw this in theaters or not. But yeah, I think you're right to assess. Most people do not know about this movie.
yeah, it's definitely a forgotten relic. I watched it for the first time this morning in preparation for this podcast.
Wait, this was your first time?
This is my first time.
Whoa!
This movie pushed my push virginity. Just like pushed
In
it right away
2024, first time
Wow.
pushing. I love this.
in the year of our Lord, right? 2024.
It's not my first time seeing it. If I may explore my past with this film,
By all
just a
means,
bit.
explore away.
This is
This
my
is a time of
second time.
discovery.
Second time seeing this film. Like Steven and most people, I had no idea what the fuck this was, to the point to where when he kept saying, "Oh, DeVaughn's gonna come on, and we're gonna talk about Push," I'm like, "What the fuck is what is a motherfucking Push? What is this?" And then when I looked it up, I was like, "Oh, that movie! I've seen that movie." I used to date this girl who was really into this movie, and probably around 2016 or so, we watched it together. And boy, watching it this
Do you
time,
still have her number? Do you want to send that to me?
I can text her if you'd like. Like, no, she married though, dude. She married. Now, not then. Hopefully, obviously.
Right.
Anyway,
Fingers crossed.
I watching it this time made me realize how much experiencing art with someone who's very enthusiastic about it makes the experience better. Because I had a good time with this movie the first time I saw it. And this time, whatever. It was just kind of meh. And so it kind of made me think about, wow, when you like somebody and they like something, it helps you like it too sometimes.
I hope I am somewhere out there. Somebody's. Oh yeah, I dated this one guy that was really into Push. I hope I'm that somebody for somebody because I love that. That's so funny.
DeVaughn, I'm positive you are. I have to imagine you are that person.
Oh man, that's so funny. I love the way you put that. Yeah, and this movie again, it like kind of it sits in this alternate universe, and already how I had mentioned Jumper, I was looking up clips for this on YouTube because I was trying to post something on Twitter, and in the comment section there were other people that go, yeah, I put this in the same film universe as Jumper, and I'm like, Oh well, apparently, so like there is something to be said about these late 2000s, early 2010s. Again, like kind of they're super ability movies, but they're not superheroes, quote unquote. Like
Right.
nobody's wearing a costume, nobody's fighting crimes in this. And so I've always kind of gravitate to those, and I feel like we don't get as many of those anymore just now because every superhero movie needs to be connected to a comic in some way or have the identifying IP. So like we really don't get these movies anymore, and it's disappointing. I do have a few scripts that I'm working on right now, so I'm hoping to bring back the alternative superhero genre, specifically of the late 2000s, early 2010s vibe.
Nice.
So yeah, because we just don't really get these type of movies anymore.
No,
Well,
we
I
really
think I
don't.
think Hollywood has resigned itself to established IP because, like you said, there was a time there when superhero movies were really hitting their strides in 2008, like 2008 and 2014, in between those years, basically, where it was hitting its stride, and the film companies thought, oh, well, we can do that. We'll just make up our own.
Mm-hmm.
That way
But then
we
they're
can
like,
control
oh,
the IP. It's
oh,
not
that
beholden to
doesn't
someone
work.
else.
That
Right.
actually doesn't work. We need an established IP, and they tried it for a while. And we got Hancock, we got Push.
We got Jumper.
So there you go. I'm sure
And they
there's a
all-
few others that.
We also got Heroes. Now, DeVaughn, what are your thoughts and
Mhm.
feelings on the
Oh,
television
boy.
show, NBC television show Heroes? Because I was an avid fan.
So I actually never watched Heroes. I know
Well, I never.
I know a lot about the lore. I've watched some like YouTube recap videos and things like that. So like I know the lore and everything, and I found it funny that this movie even has a line in it where he's like, the dad's like, "Help the girl with the blue flower. You could
Right.
save us all." And I was like, "Wow, they really ripped that straight from Heroes."
That's a
I
Santa
was getting
cheerleader in this
so many
motherfucker.
Heroes vibes from this movie. Like I'm sitting there going, this could be set in the same world as Heroes. The rules are
Well,
a little more
surprisingly,
defined,
it's
but
surprisingly more convoluted. Like, I didn't think that was possible.
And I think that's the reason. I think the reason I never started Heroes is because I know it was a writer strike show, so like
That
it's
first season is
yeah, so
perfect television, but outside of that,
I would say first
yeah,
season and a half,
and then
the
they did
writer
like
strike hits, and it all falls apart.
and then they did like a reimagining, not reimagining, but like a
sort
long
of
set
reboot, right?
reboot, not too long ago as well. So
Which
I
I
think that's
skipped completely.
yeah, so I think that's the only reason I've never given it a try, because I know it didn't get like its full complete treatment and everything.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I never dove in, but I know the vibes, and again, like I think that's something that interests me in superhero movie, or like super ability movies, not like, because in my mind, like I don't know if you guys already covered Chronicle on here as well, but
Not
Chronicle
yet.
is also, again, my shit
I
100%.
like that one.
I love that movie so much, and that one has like multiple misused sequel scripts and stuff, so that would be a fun episode as well.
Put on the
But
schedule, Steven.
I'm throwing DeVaughn on the list.
put it on Devon's episodes, these ones. But there's something that's always interested me about like the idea of like when you have super abilities in a movie and your first instinct isn't to, oh, I should probably go help people and fight crime, because yes, we want to say that that's going to be our first thought, but it's not. It's
Right.
like, if we have super abilities, we're going to do like how Nick does in this, and he's going to try to, cheat at craps. Like, like that's what people are going to do with super abilities, not just instantly go, well, I better put on a costume and start helping people. Like,
Right.
that's
Well,
not that realistic,
No.
I don't think that there's really anything wrong with that in that context, because I think the first thing that I would think if I got some really rad superpowers, I would be like, I really need to help people, but I need to have the time to commit to that, so I need to rob a fucking bank.
Okay, I was about to say you're
You know
a much
what I
better
mean?
person than me, but that makes sense.
No, I
Yes,
mean, you
rob
have
the
to
bank
have
first.
funding. You have to have funding. It's like you read Spider-Man. You see how this motherfucker struggles. Like, I'm going to get some funding, and it may be cheating at gambling. It may be, finding some harmless way to give myself a whole bunch of money, like robbing a bank, because, they're all insured, like all the bank
Yep.
robbers say when they convince
Victimless.
themselves to do it.
Victimless crime, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, get that taken care of first, and then, build a cool costume, and then go do the thing. Yeah.
I mean, except in this movie, they don't even have the
That's the
cool costumes,
technique.
though.
No. I would at least want an outfit, like a uniform, even if it was just like the same pair of pants and jacket every time I was out. Just so people can recognize me, That's what the costume's for, is for recognition. So you're around. That's why I wear a silly mustache in the summer, is so I'm very recognizable around the campground.
So
So people know I'm there.
everyone recognizes Nick Push in this movie by his jeans and his Converse sneakers. Like, of
Yeah.
course, we that's Nick Push right there.
Also,
we
the
all
fact
know.
that he
The
is
shoes.
the one white man in
Nick's
Hong Kong,
around.
that helps
Yeah.
too. It amazes me that this movie is set in Hong Kong, and yet all of our protagonists are somehow white people, with a couple of exceptions, but all of our primary protagonists are white people. Like, we just find all the white people in Hong Kong and make them the stars of our movie.
I mean, and shot on location too. Like, they are
Right,
in
yeah.
Hong Kong doing this.
For real.
There's some sort of in. I don't. I guess it's like a way to kind of fill out the world of this to like make it feel more lived in, because
Mhm.
I think it's easy to like watch certain things and be like, oh, this is contained to America, or this is contained to this area. So I don't know. I think it might have been just a shortcut to be like, no, see, like, there's psychics all over the world. Like, this is a thing. Again, like, it's their shortcut to the world building, because again, like, this movie is like, very much predicated on your guys' intro. Like, they were planning sequels, and
Oh, yeah.
like, you could tell with the world building, they thought they were going to get more. So
They
like,
wanted more, absolutely.
yeah, so I'd say the setting aids in that, to where they are trying to build this foundation out for this ongoing story, and this like ever expanding world. They were very much trying.
Yeah, very, very much so. I mean, the end kind of gives us this notion that, like, okay, this was the initial heist. This is like the first act. And because it literally ends with them just getting the MacGuffin that they're going to use later on.
Yeah.
And like plan the next heist. And so we're like, wait, this was all build up. Like, this
Literally, that was my like last note on this, because again, I've seen this movie so many times, and then like I guess I've never like looked at it more critically. And I got to the end of this movie and I go, oh wow, so nothing was actually accomplished in this movie. Like, it was
Right.
all building towards the sequel that they never got.
Which is-
like literally nothing. Like, they accomplished nothing in this movie.
Right. And in that way, it presages so many other failed franchise starters. And they're like, oh, we'll get to that in the sequel. Oh, that really cool thing you actually want to see? We'll do that in the sequel. Instead of pouring every cool idea you have into the first movie and making it as good as possible, you're just like holding off and saving stuff for the next movie. But you're not guaranteed that next movie. Next movie may never come, like the sequel to Push. And I kind of wonder if they would have called it Push 2, or like use like another like Push 2 Shadow or Move.
Push it to the limit.
That's what it should have been.
That's
The
what
limit.
it should have been. I mean, I'd assume they might have maybe went with one of the other abilities.
Right.
So like the
Watch.
next one could have been watch, move, yeah, scream,
Shadow.
Oh, they could get rid of that power, and I'd be all right.
I
I'd be
know-
so much happier.
The way it looked,
Or maybe
was
it's
so
just the
cool,
guy
though.
who does it. It's the guy who does it. He is really annoying. Really.
So
really
are
annoying.
either of you guys anime fans? Because I think that's another scratch
yeah.
that this movie movie itches, or another itch that this movie scratches for me. Because like, I love the power system of this all. I think they set it up very nicely. I like that the exposition is just over the opening credits, that are just like, here, let's get it out of the way. Let's just do this real quick.
We're just gonna
but
list like 5 of these, like 10 of these abilities, and then we'll show you what they are later.
Yeah. So I really like the power system of these various psionic abilities in this movie.
I don't dislike any genre of film as a rule, but anime tends to be one that I like a lot less than other genres. And so I think some of that aesthetic is lost on me. Specifically with those screamy guys, I'm like, oh yeah, that's way too anime for me. I'm out.
And I liked the way that they looked. Like, I love the thing their eyes did, and like, because
Yeah.
I thought that looked really fun and really cool. But the power set seemed really, I don't know, did not seem as well defined. It seemed a little more chaotic than some of the
Yeah,
others for
because it
me.
only affected the people they wanted it to affect, even though they're
Right.
literally making a sound. But their friends are okay. Their friends are like,
Well,
this is fine.
well, I think the screamers are immune to the scream themselves, I'd assume, but it is a weird it's an odd thing, and again, because like, so most animes, like especially like shows as well, it's like they either start with like an interesting story, and then and then they'll be like, okay, and then we expand the power system over time. But most series, they hook you in with that is like the thing to like kind of draw people in with an anime, and then they're like, oh yeah, and then we'll get deeper into the story a little bit later. Like, really, like Hunter x Hunter is the only like exception to that, where they literally don't bring in the power system until like 60 episodes in. It's kind of odd. But like most other shows, they're just like, hey, look, these are these abilities and what they can do, and then like, where can we find the story within that? So it's like this movie does that a lot, where it's like we get like so many, again, like variations on the different abilities and things and people in this world. But it's like, I don't know jack shit about the division really, or what they're trying to do. I don't, like, we're jumping in when there's already been history amongst certain characters and everything.
Right.
Nick, like, obviously we see like this like cold open with like Nick's dad being killed by the division, but like, then we find out later, like, oh, he's had other run-ins with the division. So it's like, wait a sec, so this story's already in progress or something. So it's like, this movie definitely predicates heavily on being like, hey, this world of various psychic abilities, what can we do with that? And again, like, I think that is just like, has what has always kind of kept me on the hook, is me trying to think of like, well, what are some other psychic abilities in this world that could like be a thing, and like,
Mhm.
how do certain people, so this movie very much is uh uh hinging its success on like, if people find these abilities and this power system interesting or not.
I think that it's interesting, but I think that the one thing that does work about this is um, that all of the powers are, they're kind of too complicated to the point to where if you think about them too much, it all falls apart. But the way this movie is paced, you don't really have time to think about it too
No
much.
time.
No.
And I think that works in the advantage of this film, because there are some really fun moments that come out of that nonsensical power system. But you don't have time to sit there and critique it, because you're like, oh, that's really cool. And as soon as you're like, but wait a minute, they move on to something else and you're distracted.
And it's the thing I like about certain kinds of world building, where they kind of just they give you like a brief, like, hey, this is a thing that exists in this world, and they don't explain it too deep, and then they just kind of throw it at you, and then you kind of have to acclimate. Oh, I guess in this world people scream until other shit blows up. I guess that's just a
Yeah.
thing that happens in this world. I guess everybody that can see the future is a really good artist, like that one dude in Heroes. Like, everyone
Yeah.
draws what they see. Like, it's that kind of world building that I think really kept me engaged. It is one of my people, longtime listeners know that I'm a sucker for good world building,
It's
and I
true.
think that's one of the things this movie does best, is building out its world. Um, the execution isn't always enough, but I like the description. I like the groundwork that it does, and ultimately I love that we get one of each. We get to see what every one of those little things that she mentions at the beginning does at some point in the movie. The movie's just ticking off those little boxes as we go. Um, as to the division, I don't know. You see one shadowy government organization, you've seen them all,
And
really.
literally just called the division. Like, we couldn't
Yeah.
have come up with like a cool thing, like in Jumper, their thing is called the Paladins. Ooh, what's that mean? That's interesting. But the division, like, come on. Like, they could have given us a little something something there.
They could have even been like division and then a number.
Right.
Like, that would even be, oh, it's straight up Division 6. They're going to fuck us up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would that a number does go a long way.
Absolutely.
In that
Well-placed
situation,
number.
it's better than just division.
Correct. Yeah, and it's was it the one from the Mummy, the Prodigium? Like, it's just, we're just gonna come up with just some really obscure word that hasn't been used yet and assign it to our shadowy
We
organization.
just call
So
them the
stupid, but I love it though.
I know, same.
defenestrators, and they just go throwing people out of windows. It's their main superpowers to throw people through windows.
I mean, we almost get Chris Evans just walking off the side of a building in this movie. That almost happens.
Damn,
I know. We get that close. So close.
that close.
And yet so far. Damn. Yeah, we've talked a lot about this movie, but we've not really talked about this movie. And I think it's time, 25 minutes into the episode, I think it's time for us to dig into the plot of this film. And we don't have a lot of time, so let's what the hell? Let's just do it in 60 seconds. For those who are just tuning into our push episode, first of all, why? But second of all, thank you. Welcome. It's for DeVaughn. We know.
Don't you know that you just accidentally drop into a podcast episode 25 minutes in sometimes? Don't you hate when that happens?
You know what? There's just so much at the beginning, that so much chuffa you have to get through. I just start 25 minutes in usually.
Right. And usually
even if it's a 30-minute podcast, 25 minutes in.
By that point, everyone's kind of hit its stride. Like we know where we're going. Like
the rhythm's there, yeah.
It's established at that point. So it's usually a good time to tune in.
Yeah. You heard it here first. 25 minutes is the perfect time to hop in on a podcast.
There it is. Especially this podcast. Because that's when we're doing the plot in 60 seconds. This is the part of the show where we recount the plot of the film we're watching and talking about in 60 seconds or less. Normally that role falls to one of the hosts, but our guest has graciously offered to cover the plot of this film in 60 seconds or less. Tucker has a minute on the clock. He will give you the 30 and 10-second warnings, DeVaughn, and the time will start whenever you do.
All right, because Garrett usually handles this on our show. I usually don't get to do it myself, so we'll see how I fare here.
You did really well on Hancock, as I recall.
Thank you. All right, here we go. So, little kid Nick Push, he sees his dad murdered by the division. We get introduced. There's bad people searching for these people with abilities. What kind of abilities? They are various psychic abilities, as a ominous little girl will tell us off screen, listing a bunch of them off, and we will kind of see them later in the movie used in various ways. The division, they want these people with powers, but they also want to kill them. It's uncertain what they really want.
30 seconds.
Nick has been trying to avoid this entire life, but it catches back up with him as he goes on this journey and heist to reunite with his ex-girlfriend, to figure out the murders of his dad, to do all these other things, but actually do none of them. And they have a good time doing it. We're pushing real good. I think that's about it, honestly.
we had a good time doing it. That's my favorite.
The real push was the friends we made along the way.
And they did. This movie is about friendship also.
Ultimately.
Found family friendship in this, for real.
And karate. No, psychic powers is what I meant. Friendship and psychic powers.
Right.
Speaking of friendship and karate, the guy who plays the cloaking guy, the guy that cloaks them,
the shadow.
He's a McPoyle.
He's a McPoyle. Oh, yeah. As soon as I saw him, I'm like, oh, you're the non-Jimmy Simpson McPoyle.
Yes.
Literally.
Like, there's Jimmy Simpson, and then there's you. Nate Mooney is the actor's name, lest we...
They brought Sean Whalen in these last couple seasons, too.
I was about to
like a cousin.
This dude was giving such strong Sean Whalen vibes. Like, I love Sean Whalen's one of my favorite, like, snap your fingers and point guys.
Friend of the show, Sean Whalen, or I should say friend of Tucker, Sean Whalen. But yeah,
Pinky was giving big Sean Whalen vibes.
Absolutely,
they could definitely be in the same family.
Yes,
I would believe that they were both McPoyles. Also, a McPoyle, director Guillermo del Toro. That's one of my favorite little fun facts.
That's true. He's Pappy
McPoyle. Every one of the McPoyles sprang from his loins, fully formed. Yes. Lest we forget. And of course, that came to be because Charlie Day got cast in Pacific Rim. One of those Guillermo del Toro movies. He's made a lot of movies. He's not made even more, but he's made a lot.
That's so true. GDP, we love you.
We do.
Yeah, and again, like this cast is so interesting, and and again, like kind of the way that everything is spread out. So what are your guys's favorite of the ability people here? We got watchers, we got pushers, we got bleeders, we got wipers, we got sniffs, unfortunately named. Like that's not great.
Sniffs or sniffers, yeah.
We have stitches. I thought that was a very interesting one. This as well.
Wait, that one guy that was the sniffer for The Division,
Corey
he
Stoll?
looks so much like a Skarsgård, but he's not.
No.
Oh, I always call Corey Stoll. We have Mark Strong at home.
Yes,
like
oh my God,
that's
yeah.
Corey Stoll for me, unfortunately.
Wow,
like
dude.
he is very much the Walmart brand of Mark Strong.
Here's the thing, though. I think Corey Stoll's a better actor than Mark Strong.
Really?
I do.
Oh,
I'm a Corey
fascinating.
Stoll stan.
Oh.
Maybe it's just because I saw him in the first season of House of Cards and was like, that's my guy. But like, no, I like Corey Stoll quite a bit. I get where you're coming from, but yeah.
Steven, you had told me you particularly enjoyed his performance in Quantumania, I believe.
That is not something I said. I don't think I enjoyed anyone's performance in Quantumania.
You have to let go in that movie. You just have to let go and enjoy the ride. Because honestly, it's the best Star Wars movie I've seen since the original trilogy.
And that is sacrilege, sir. And that is blasphemy, heresy, and sacrilege all rolled into one just smoking gun.
That's
right
okay, because I don't really care about the Star Wars that much. I don't have much invested in it.
It shows. He shouldn't even be in Quantumania. What the fuck is going on? And that movie is a mess from top to bottom.
You gotta let go. Just let go. You'll feel yourself floating and enjoying Quantumania.
But you know what Corey Stoll is good in is the original Ant-Man film. He's very good in that.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I like Corey Stoll. What can I say?
He's a rad dude.
When he shows up and shit, I'm like, all right, Corey Stoll, right on.
That's me with Cliff Curtis in this as well. Cliff Curtis is also a, like, when I see him pop up and stuff, I'm like, ooh. And we did a Patreon episode on talking about Dr. Sleep, and he's in Dr. Sleep, and Dr. Sleep has people with these they call it the shine and that or whatever, but it's like they got push abilities, and I was like, wait a sec, I was like, is this the character? Is this a prequel for his character in Push, maybe?
First of all,
named Hook Waters.
I was gonna say his name is Hook Waters.
Wow, what a name.
And if I'm gonna be really honest, that might be my favorite of the ability types in this. Just the ability to like make anyone see whatever you want them to see. Like he's handing people just random slips of paper and they're seeing him as money.
Yeah, zoom in on his wallet where he just has pieces of paper that say 500 on it. I was like, that's pretty fun.
That's amazing. Like that is a primo power. I like that one quite a bit.
Yes, but so when they take it back to the register and then someone else opens the register, does it still look like that money? See, I've taken one step and I've already just destroyed the whole thing.
It doesn't last. It doesn't last.
Okay. So how does he keep doing it then?
He has to get out of there before they notice.
I mean, yeah, he's a criminal on the run. Like, that's how he gets away with it. Like,
and he can also make himself look like someone else for a brief period of time as well. So
and that's another thing. Like, I feel like all of these powers are too OP. Like, the world would have collapsed in on itself at this point. Like, 2 minutes of everybody having all those OP powers, we'd all be fucking dead.
I know, because it's interesting because it's like we see a good amount of people with abilities in this movie, and they mention that it's like a worldwide thing, and like at one point he's like, I got 20 of the best washers in the world right now. So it's like, okay, so what is the percentage of people that have these abilities in this world? Like in the opening crawl, she like literally just says, yeah, some people are special, and just leaves it at that. An
undetermined amount of people are special.
She just leaves it at that. But then we see in this movie, like, okay, the Division has a good amount of agents with powers, so it's like, what is the percentage of people with these abilities, undetermined.
Right.
I think my favorite is the ill-named sniffs, the sniffers. I think that's a very interesting ability, like how they can kind of, things that you have touched and come in contact with, and they kind of like get this like brief like flashback. They're kind of like reverse psychics in a way,
Yeah.
but like tactilely.
Mhm.
This movie, and again, corner of alternative superhero genres. I don't know if you guys ever read the Charlie Bone books as a kid. Charlie Bone was like the like rip off of like it was like very much in response to Harry Potter. It's like
Okay.
it's an academy of people with abilities that like descended from this medieval knight or something. um
Okay.
and there's a character in that series that can like do what they do with like, but it's like specifically with clothing items. But
Mm.
these sniffs, they can do it with like any item. So I think that's a really fun ability in this. So I'd say that's probably my favorite of the group here.
Tucker, you got a favorite?
Um, I don't know. Like I said, for me, as much as I did enjoy some things in this movie, like there were some times where I had to just go with the flow because if I thought about how OP all the powers were, it would just make it all crumble for me. So I don't know. I guess because like I think of it this way, like the Watchers are cool, yeah, but then like so they see a future, but they're immediately able to change it in infinite amount of ways. So how is that even their vision of the future anyway? And
I actually
like
like
this,
that. I
I
like
like that the
I like the approach of like, yeah, you can see the future, but the future can change with certain, like, like she even says at the very beginning, like, the biggest of ways by the smallest of things. Like I've always found that interesting in like time traveling movies. I don't like the future being set in stone. So, and I think that lends well to like the heist in the third act of like, and like, so many times where they're like, oh, you got to make decisions, but don't think about it, make decisions that the watchers can't track, uh do things that don't make sense or whatever. I don't know. It's kind of silly, but also like, I don't know, I dig it. I think it's a different take on versus like, how would this movie play out if the future was set in stone and we had watchers that can see the future, and then they're just like, okay, so like this is what the end of the movie's gonna be like, and then you're gonna watch the whole movie, and then they have to jump through hoops to make the end, interesting. So like, I like the take on that the future is like not set in stone.
Not a 12
I'm glad.
Monkeys fan, are you?
Never seen.
Ooh,
Oh,
okay.
oh,
Sorry for ruining 12 Monkeys for you then, I guess.
Oh, maybe I'll probably forget. But I can watch 12 Monkeys, and they did a
Oh,
series too. There's a
they
movie
did.
and a
It's
true.
series, right?
I've not seen the series, but the movie rips. Terry Gilliam, Bruce Willis. Fuck yes.
Mm,
Brad Pitt, Bradley
Yes.
Pittinson.
David Morse in there as well. Some very, very talented individuals in that movie.
Dude, yeah, but I guess my answer is that I don't really like any of the powers because if I think
wow.
about them too much, they all just crumble apart. And like I say, like I was saying about Quantumania, like I
Crumble
can,
apart as in the powers don't make sense on how they work, or on that they're just too much.
I think number one they're too OP, and I think number two that the more you think about them critically, the less they make sense. Most of them. I mean, with like Chris Evans, he just like moves stuff. So like whatever. Like I get that. That's the most simple one, I think.
Telekinesis, right?
Which is really funny that the movie's called Push, so you'd assume that Nick Push was a pusher himself, but he's not. He's a mover,
I love that you're
which is
calling him Nick Push, and that's like not even his name. That's
I don't know what his
amazing.
last name is.
According to IMDb, it is Gant. Nick Gant is
Nah, it's Push.
Yeah, I know, you're right.
That's like my new favorite thing is making people's last name just the name of the movie.
Yeah,
I
with
just love
Robert De
doing that.
Niro's character in the score is clearly the score.
Yeah.
Like I will brook no dissent.
John Score.
Right.
Score. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah, but I love that the movie is about the pusher who is the gal Kira,
Mhm.
and she's a pusher, as well as Jaimin Hansu's character as well, which is
I like him.
pushing thoughts into people's minds. I love that just some of the names don't really make much sense because like
Like the bleeders.
like you could name a pusher something different when you're talking about like pushing a suggestion into somebody's mind. Like there's another way you could go about that.
Chris Nolan called them inceptors.
Or right? Exactly. Oh, look at that. Push in the Chris Nolan universe. I can get in on that.
We're crossing over, boys. We're crossing over.
Another I would say better executed heist movie that came out honestly right around this time frame. I think
Yeah,
2010.
like the next year. Yeah, 2010.
That's
So
wild.
there you go. Like there was something in the water around this time. Like the bleeders probably is the name that makes the least amount of sense. Although we see like a glimpse of it when they're running through the fish market and all the fish are like exploding in the tanks, and you just see these like almost like fireworks of blood inside the tanks right before they explode.
It's like bleeder is that's a cool power, but also not very convenient because it also just like makes a mess and causes chaos. You know, like
Fucking
it's
chaos is what it
like
is,
because we really only get to see one person actually die from getting their ears bled out, but like that's because homie was like already like got his ass kicked or whatever. Like there's like a scene where they are like screaming at Nick Push for like 5 minutes straight. And he's, taking it or whatever. So it's like, okay, like it really takes a long time for this to work. So it's like, it's an interesting power, but also not very convenient.
Well, and then we get Pop Father at the end screaming, and he just brings down a whole fucking building on top of himself. Like it, so it's
oh yeah, they are the Pop
consistent
family. That's hilarious. As in, they
Right.
make people's heads go pop. That's so funny.
Did I ever tell you guys the story of the time when I popped my eardrum by blowing my nose?
No,
Can we take a tangent here and just let me tell you this very personal story about the
Hey,
time I did that?
I'm a liver with tinnitus. So I'm here for this.
So when my daughter was very young, probably around 4 or 5, it was the morning and I was getting her ready for preschool. And she was up in her little high chair eating her food and stuff, and I had a stuffy nose, much like I do today. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to blow my nose, because that's a normal thing people do every day with no expectation of any harm coming to them because of it. So I straight up blew my nose, and all of a sudden, I feel a pop in my head. I lose all control of my body. My equilibrium does not exist, and I crumple to the floor like a sack of potatoes. When I get there, I
as
puke.
one does. Oh God!
Just barf all over the floor. I can't move. Like I can move a little bit, but like I'm so disoriented because I have no equilibrium, no balance, nothing. And
I imagine one of two reactions from your daughter. Either she thinks it is the funniest thing in the world, or she is mortified.
This bitch is laughing her ass off.
That's what I thought.
This
Honestly,
is like getting drunk in like 5 seconds. Like
Yes.
That's what this experience sounds like.
Oh, it was the worst, man. And it took me a while to figure out what had happened, but I think I popped my eardrum.
that'd do it.
And so every time they were doing that in this movie, I'm like, oh, I know how much that sucks. I'm sorry.
Chris Evans should be vomiting all over himself right now.
Yes, just puking and shitting and pissing and like
lack
not
of
being able to
vomiting.
move. Yeah.
I think
Woof.
one thing that keeps, because usually when I see a lot of these psychic abilities, they're generally combined into one or two characters. Like telepathy covers like 3 or 4 of these different abilities. Telekinesis covers 3 or 4 more. And so usually I think we want to divide them up amongst as many characters as possible so we can get a team together, A. But then B, by spreading them out, we have to find new and interesting ways for them to execute those powers and those abilities. So that's why I think they often come across as OP, is because we're trying to find ways that maybe they haven't been used in a comic book, or
And they all have like a built-in like weakness too. Like the
Right.
shadows are like, oh, like we work on sniffs, but we don't work on watchers,
Right.
or like, whatever. So like they all kind of have like they're like kind of like little built-in flaws, and I think the subgenre of the movie like kind of subverts like what you'd expect, because I think a lot of people might see this and you're thinking like a more like high octane action movie, and this isn't
Yeah.
that. Like, I mean, yes,
No.
it does have some action scenes in it that are very fun, but at the same time it's not the like kind of, you know, thing you think it is. Like, they use, again, like the abilities come into play for this heist, this mind heist that they have in the third act. I went on a Force 5 podcast, and I brought this in for a secret pick on my top 5 heist movies. Because I like that, you know, they do form this whole thing around like what certain people's abilities can use. So even though there are some very fun action scenes, which is like 85% practical in this
Yeah.
movie, by the way. If you have the DVD or the Blu-ray or the 4K, which I watched in 4K, looks great. There's
There's a 4K.
there's a lot of behind the scenes footage on the making of this movie, and it's super fun. Like so much of this they did practically, and I like that with Nick, and the way that the movers and the telekinesis. I think it is a slight difference, because, you know, telekinesis is overused in movies now, I'd say, because like because it's such an easy thing to do. Obviously,
Right.
like, you don't really have to put much on it, you know. But I like that in this, like, one, we do have like a visualization of like when they use it. Every ability has its own sound design as well in this movie that I think is really cool. So whether it's like a sound like when they do it, or when they're pushing ideas into people's mind, there's a high pitch ringing. I don't know if you noticed that. Little
Yeah.
cool details like that. But like, I like how the movers can like deflect bullets, and they kind of like use like mini force fields in addition
Right.
to like actually just like levitating things. So, you know, I think they'd come up with some unique ways to take the stuff that we've seen before and use them in different ways, but then also bring stuff in like I thought the Stitch was very interesting. She could like heal you, but also like distort you to like cause you pain. I thought that was like I was like, oh, that's something I wouldn't have like thought about in this.
It's like telekinesis for your insides.
Yeah.
Dude, yeah.
I like, yeah, the various ways that they are all supposed to be, like, they are all like psionic abilities, like they all come from you know, the mind in a different way, I think is really fun.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably learn in the sequel that the Division are the ones that created it, and so now they're the ones that are trying to control it. Like, that seems like a very linear kind of
Oh
thing.
no, they said directly from Nazis.
Oh, that's
I
right.
forgot the casual drop in this, that there's like, it all started with the Nazis experimenting on psychic people for warfare, and it was like, oh wait, what?
But I think we can probably draw a straight line from like the Nazi scientists that came to America post World War II and to the creation of the Division. Like, I think that's a straight line.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That seems
Yeah,
pretty
for
clear.
sure.
But yeah, I mean, the director Paul McGuigan, in terms of action movies, had previously directed Lucky Number 11 in 2006, a movie I saw in theaters.
I just watched that for the first time earlier this year.
Yeah, what'd you think?
Because I was researching for a movie where we were breaking down Quentin Tarantino copycat movies.
Oh yeah,
and my take from that movie is, it is the most egregious offender of thinking that Tarantino dialogue is just somebody saying something, other person saying, wait, say that again, and then they say it again, and then they ask it as a question again, and then they say it again. And it's like, no, that's not quippy dialogue. That's not how you do it. That's the whole entirety of Lucky Number 11. Oh my goodness, I didn't realize it was the same director.
Yeah, and then and you also get the Bruce Willis connection in there, of course. Quentin, of course, Willis being a collaborator of Quentin's, at least in the 90s. So
yeah.
And then he would go on to direct future episode of this podcast, Victor Frankenstein.
Oh.
So we this is not our last Paul McGuigan film. British director, also directed I'm guessing a British independent film called Gangster Number 1, with patron saint of this podcast, Paul Bettany.
I love Paul Bettany, but yeah, he has totally been in a lot of almost franchises. Thank goodness he locked in Vision.
Right?
He
The
also
day-
directed. Go ahead, sorry, Steven.
No, I was going to say the day he was told his career was over in Hollywood, he gets the call from Joss Whedon about, hey, you want to be the Vision? So I just, we love Paul.
Shout out
Bettany.
Priest.
It's on the list. We haven't covered it yet, but it's on the list. One of these days, we're just going to do a Paul Bettany theme month. Just cram as many Paul Bettany movies into one month as we can. I'm sorry, Tucker.
That. I was just going to say this director also directed Wicker Park with the official disenfranchised Playgirl centerfold Josh Hartnett.
Yeah,
that's on my list. I haven't seen that movie, but I've been
saw
wanting
it
to watch Wicker Park.
Shortly after it came out, it's of course named after a neighborhood in the city I live, Chicago, Illinois.
It certainly is a movie.
That's a thing that it happened, and we all let it happen.
Oh, what an interesting career this Paul McGuigan has had.
Indeed, he's directed, and then a lot of TV, Sherlock, 4 episodes of Sherlock, an episode of the NBC TV show Smash, an episode of Scandal,
Luke Cage,
3 episodes of something called The Family.
Hey, see, Kevin Feige, Push fan, hiring him for Luke Cage.
Noted fan of Push, Kevin Feige. I mean, he does. I want to talk about the Chris Evans superhero arc, which is a thing I always want to talk about when we cover a Chris Evans superhero movie, because I think it is absurd. DeVaughn, you and I were talking about it briefly while we were waiting for Tucker to make coffee before the record. He gets his start in 2001 with Not Another Teen Movie, where he plays Jake Weiler, the Freddie Prinze Jr. analog in that film. He does a few other movies, and then in 2005, he's cast as Johnny Storm in the Tim Story Fantastic Four films. From there, he does 2 years after that, he does, see our previous episode, TMNT, where he plays Casey Jones in the animated Ninja Turtles movie. The same year he does that, he's in Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. He does Push 2 years after that. The Losers the year after that. See our previous episode on The Losers. Same year he does The Losers at Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And then the year after that, 2011, Captain America: The First Avenger. So that's like 6 superhero movies inside of just like 6 years, which is insane to me.
Or at least comic book movies, at least.
Right.
I wouldn't really call Scott Pilgrim superhero, but definitely comic book movie.
Yeah.
And then 2 years after that, he does Snowpiercer, which is also based on a graphic novel. So I mean,
yeah. So I wonder if this got a sequel. Would they? I mean, obviously the movie was predicated on him coming back, but then like, would Captain America and the Avengers, would it have derailed said sequel, or would we have gotten like one of those sequels where we recast Nick Push as somebody else?
Here's my thought. If we get a sequel to this, we get John Krasinski as Captain America. Like, that's the alternate timeline. Because
I'm so glad I don't live in that timeline. So fucking glad I don't live in that timeline. Barf.
Oh man, that would be crazy.
Yeah,
crazy, awful, unwatchable, disgusting. Is what it would be.
And Chris Evans, like,
don't hold back. Tell us how you really feel.
Chris Evans isn't my favorite Chris, but I think he's the most consistent Chris.
He's very reliable.
I think you've always, like, even across all these various comic book stuff, you know he's gonna buy in, but also still bring, like, I'm not gonna say an everyman, because I mean he still looks like Chris Evans,
exactly.
But at the same time he does kind of still bring this like kind of consistent relatability, and that is ever present for Captain America as well. A very vanilla character, but like he still brings enough flavor to it to like, make him interesting. So,
right.
Chris Evans, and I guess I don't know. I guess he's just a big nerd. Like, he really likes doing these things. And then even the fact that he was willing to do his little cameo for Deadpool and Wolverine. I mean, I guess he's very familiar with that backlot, or so whatever. But yeah, so it is interesting seeing like all these like early like almost franchise starters, and it's just like, all right, we're gonna build something around Chris Evans somewhere, and then it took the MCU to actually happen. But I mean, I would have loved to have seen Chris Evans in 3 Push movies, like in a Push trilogy.
which is clearly what they're like. This is act 1, and then you get act 2, which is probably them breaking in and ultimately
Truly.
failing, and then the third act is when they figured, like, this whole thing probably could have been a season of television. Stretch it out, develop these
Please.
characters a little more.
That's what I think about all the time now. Like, if there was, like, I mean, obviously, like, you know, looking at the, you know, we'll talk the box office later, but, like, you know, this wasn't going to be the draw, but, like, if this was something that people knew about, like, I think this would make a wonderful leap to TV. You know, because again, like, you know, you're able to do most of these things like on a decent sized budget, you know, and things like that. I think this would very much be sustainable for TV, but like, it really did shock me at the end of this movie where I go, wow, they just did like one thing, because the whole movie is like, is the girl the MacGuffin? Is the drug, that's the MacGuffin? But then it's like, well, they're just trying to get one syringe, and we literally saw when they injected Kira, they got a bunch of it. So
Right.
really, it's not like that's the only one or anything.
Nope.
They're just like, oh, and because at the end they go, well, Division will do anything to make sure it doesn't get into anybody's hands. So it's like, that's their leverage for this whole thing, is like,
Mhm.
they have like, hey, not that like, hey, we got your last vial. It's like, no, we got like, hey, we got it, you know. Like, you know, like there's still, the Division still exists at the end of this movie. The
Yep.
scientists that know how to make the drug still exist. Like, literally everything is open at the end of this movie except for Kira's gonna kill Carver, and they have one vial of drug. That's
Right.
it. That's what they accomplished by the end of this movie.
Correct.
They
yeah.
obtained one drug.
And a team of people who know how to use their abilities for good and or evil or both. Like, I want to see the prequel. I want to see her mom putting all of this together, because it's very much kind of like a season 3 of Heroes kind of thing, where you find out that everyone's parents were all like a part of like the original like Illuminati style super team, and kind of they all had like their own abilities and were kind of like working machinations behind the scenes, and all knew each other somehow. Like, it has that kind of vibe, because everyone's like, oh, I knew your mom. Oh, your mom told me to be here on this day. Oh, your mom said this would happen. And so I'm like, I want to see her mom like assembling these people
So
and telling them this shit.
yeah, we only see the back of Cassie's mom's head in this movie, but that would have been the big sequel casting. Who
Right.
plays Cassie's mom in this? I mean, I guess the sequel would have come out in like 2011, 2012. I'm gonna go with Jennifer Jason Leigh. I think she would have been a great Cassie's mom in the sequel that doesn't exist.
I was going to say Michelle Pfeiffer.
Or Michelle Pfeiffer of Ant-Man movies.
Elizabeth Shue.
Bring
you
it back
guys.
around.
It's always the shoe. Always the shoe.
Justice for Elizabeth Shue. Absolutely.
Dude, yeah.
Like, yeah, lots of options for sure. It in reality probably would have been none of those, but like you get, yeah, I want to see that. Like, that's the story I want to see. But again, it's that franchise starter thing of, oh, well, we got to save it for the sequel. We got to save something for the sequel. No, you fucking don't. Just make a good movie, and then if we like it, think of another idea.
I'll say one thing that I will give this movie in this regard is, because again, like, just now thinking in current 2024 superhero movie fatigued brain, part of what has also led to my fatigue is everything is such high stakes now. Everything's the end of the world, the universe, you know, like,
Right.
and then it's like, well, now none of it really matters. Like, it's
Yeah.
all multiverse bullshit. Everything is so big. So I
Sky
do
being fucking everywhere.
So I do kind of like that in this movie, that the stakes are like in the dirt. Like, I mean, it's like, all they're trying to do is live mainly in this movie. I guess like that's really the plot. There's like, hey, we just like want to not die, and we need to accomplish certain things to make sure that happens. So like, I, on one hand, I kind of like that the stakes are super low, but at the same time, like, again, like, I got to the end of the movie, I was like, wow, I feel like we like just got going. Like, all right, like where to next, you know?
Exactly.
So it's such a bummer that, you know, they kind of really banked on getting more, and then it's just like it, you know. So, but again, that's why I always find myself returning to this movie, because I'm just like, it's always the man, what if, what would it look, what is the timeline where we have a full Push trilogy? Like, what does that look like? I
Right.
think the world would be a better place.
And strangely enough for me, I agree with you, but that's what frustrates me about this movie, is that it ultimately does lead to nothing, and we're not going to get to see anything. And I really like, this is one of those movies where I really like the intent behind it. I like the ideas. I like the thought of this film. I like the potential of the ideas in this movie. But like Steven said a couple minutes ago, make this a miniseries, make this a TV show. Like, you're cramming too much in there. The editing suffers. The editing really suffers in a few places. The pacing suffers. The character development suffers. Like, these are interesting ideas that I am interested in. But the way that this movie pulls it off, more often than not, it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, and that's where I end up landing too. Like, there's a lot here, and maybe too much here for us to flesh out. Like, make a couple of companion comic book series. Like, there's a chance to go like full on franchise with
which they did do with the release of this. They did release a prequel comic, so they were thinking, more than this movie the whole time.
For sure.
And it's interesting, just like, I guess also at the time, because like, even though 2009 is not that long ago, the landscape of this subgenre has changed so much in that time that like now we could make a Push trilogy straight to streaming for 10 million bucks a piece, versus in 2009 this movie was made for $38 million. Like, nobody is putting that behind an original idea anymore, unfortunately. But like, today, I think a trilogy straight to streaming would be like, like in its wheelhouse, so it's like, it's very fascinating just at the time that this came out as such a fascinating time for this genre.
Absolutely.
I think this would be a perfect fit for an Amazon series, a 10 episode season, at least 2 or 3 seasons of that, because they've already kind of got their own. They've got superhero shit, but all their superhero shit on Prime is very unique. Of course, it's based on established IPs, but I mean, The Boys, that's a lot bigger now than it was before the show happened. So The Boys, the show kind of...
There was 2 seasons of The Gifted on Fox, and I think that is also kind of like the kind of level of this movie as well.
I don't know.
It's like The Gift is, it was an X-Men show that was on Fox that nobody knew was an X-Men show, because they like didn't really market it as such. And it's like a serial, a weekly serial, that kind of show. And it's like not connected to the MCU or whatever. Like, I don't know.
There's a little X over the the dot on the eye. That's the only tie-in.
That's literally it.
We have a character named Esma Frost. So
Esme Frost,
yeah. So that might be a White Queen thing there.
But yeah. So like it's very much kind of in that wheelhouse for sure. And I would totally kind of see that happening. But I guess, again, just for the time, like they really were trying to kind of make it something, and it just kind of because like, not that the plot doesn't engage me when I'm watching, because I think as far as like the kind of twists and turns that they do does keep me engaged in everything. And I think it is very, it's fun. It's got its like kind of slick moments, and the way that it's like filmed as well. So I mean, I'm not gonna say that like the plot is completely empty, but it is just so obvious at the end of the movie, like how much they were planning on more.
Yeah, I mean, and this is early enough superhero, like, and this, we kind of talked about this time frame for superheroes when you were on for Hancock as well, but like, this is the year after Iron Man. Like, this is the 1 year since, like, one of 2 years since 2008 where Marvel didn't have a movie out. Like, the MCU just wasn't putting out a movie. But like, you get Hancock the year before, you get like Push, you get Jumper, I think the year after. Like, this is kind of the last gasp for that kind of non-comic book superhero adjacent thing before Marvel kind of just completely overtakes the landscape. And so this is kind of our last chance at maybe starting something fairly original and maybe getting it off the ground. But I'm trying to think of one of those like original superhero projects that actually did get the sequel it was hoping for, and I'm kind of drawing a blank right now.
Yeah, none that I can think of as like the originals. Like, I'm not sure, but like the closest thing that we have right now happening, I will say I am very excited for Craven. You want to know why? Because I think the Sony Venom movies and Morbius are like they give me the vibe of like 2005 Daredevil. It exists in that like kind of sphere, and I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm digging this because it's off doing its own thing, not hurting anybody. Nobody asked for it, but also it's inoffensive as well. I think I'm not gonna say I'm a Morbius defender, but I'll say not as bad as people make it out to be. Honestly, it's not that bad, but it's there, and I feel like that's what I'm gonna feel about Craven. I haven't seen Venom 3 yet, but I like the Venom movies for just they're there, like they are just there, and I'm very intrigued to see about Craven.
They could put anything out with Tom Hardy as those two characters, and I'd watch it because I love his chemistry with himself in those films. I really do.
I'm gonna call it right now. Future episode of this podcast, Craven.
Yeah, and how many guests can we have per episode?
I mean, we've only done one so far, but I'm not beyond putting more than one guest.
There was something, DeVaughn. There was something that you just mentioned that is a future episode of this podcast. What was it, Steven?
Daredevil, 2003 Daredevil.
Yes, director's cut. Hopefully,
director's cut, baby.
Absolutely, yeah. Director's cut. Come on, we have standards here on this podcast.
I feel like we should have multiple guests on that episode.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean,
feels like a seminal episode for this podcast.
One guest is in the room with us now. Of course, we do have the Daredevil TV show dropping next year, so I will say it now.
That's the one that we were talking about earlier that we couldn't remember. It was
I remember. I was just going to talk about it off mic, but yeah. I actually had just reviewed like next year's schedule not too long ago because I'm starting to slot things in for next year. Already, because I am a madman with scheduling. And of course, I had you down on the short list for that episode. Tucker, if you have another guest for that episode, by all means, the more the merrier. Let's just turn this thing into like a Pod and the Pendulum during the Saw era, like free for all.
I'm sure people understand that reference.
DeVaughn got it.
Well, that's enough. That's all we need, honestly.
Because DeVaughn was there for like the whole thing, so I just popped in on one episode and it was madness. But yeah, it was a good time.
I will bet.
Yeah, if you've listened to the Saw 6 episode of Pod and the Pendulum that I was on, you didn't hear the whole episode. I'll just say that, and we'll leave it there. That's a joke for me and DeVaughn.
Saw Mania. It was a time. Whoa.
That was the autumnal spirit was in the air there. What else do we have to say about Push? I know, DeVaughn, you probably got some more thoughts. What else you got?
Again, I kind of just I like the mixture of things that we get in this. How we were kind of talking about, like, this isn't just like straight up action. Like, I like that we do get like a variation of action scenes. Like, we get like to see the various abilities like put to use. We get a couple chase scenes. We get some hand-to-hand scenes. Again, like a lot of this like very practically done, like, so it's like a lot of wire work and stuff and people getting drugged and flung around and stuff. Like the behind the scenes for the scene where Nick Push goes into the restaurant where Carver and Victor are there, and he like has the floating guns and stuff, and Victor's throwing them around. Victor, one of my favorite undescript henchmen, like His whole thing in this movie is he wears a suit and has a very serious face.
Mhm.
He has no personality whatsoever. He just grimaces, and I love him for some reason. He's so not interesting that I love him. For some
Right.
reason.
He's
I love
a
that
blank
scene.
slate. You just project everything on him. That one scene is really badass, though. Like, if that's the only scene we get with him, it's a fucking good scene to get. Like,
And then the
really
scene
is.
where he like takes out like fucking when they're in the third act, when he like takes out like all the fucking when the Yakuza screamers come in,
Right.
bleeders come in, and it's like literally him against like all of them, and fucking like Jaimin Hansu has to like just like duck behind a trailer, and
Mhm.
Victor's just fucking just going crazy. I was like, man, this dude fucking like he's just a really, again, like badass undescript henchman.
He
In this,
is what Chris Evans could have been had he been training all this time instead of running. Like, it's
right?
kind of the
Yeah.
vibe that I get. It's kind of the villain that's like a souped up version of the hero. Like, that's what, and we get a few of those. Like, Jaimin Hansu is the souped up version of Camilla Bell. The pop girl is the souped up version of Cassie, and then of course the Victor or Vincent, the V guy, is the souped up version of Chris Evans, like of Nick Push. Like, it all kind of, there's the correlation there.
I'm seeing here Neil Jackson, who portrays Victor, known for he is one of the prominent villains in the Blade, the series, the Spike TV series.
That's
With sticky
right.
fingers?
With sticky fingers.
I liked that show. I really did. I was sad that they canceled it because I thought it was really well done. Like,
That's right,
it was
Wesley Snipes. There was more than one Blade.
no, it's the same Blade. He's playing the same character. It's just
True,
a different actor.
true.
It is canon. Well, I don't know if it's canon, but
Well, now
the films
that
are canon in the series.
now that the MCU Blade movie isn't happening, let's just bring Sticky Fingers back for the series. Let's just
There you
run
go.
it back
Well,
for
it's
the
like-
Blade series.
And when's the last time Onyx has dropped an album? He's not doing any music. Like, come on, get him as Blade. Let's do it. Dang.
Oh, Marvel, what are we doing here? Like, seriously, what are we doing?
Why get Mahershala Ali when you can have sticky fingers?
Yes,
For so
why
much
get the
cheaper.
two-time Academy Award winner? Why do that? Why would you want that?
Yeah, but you didn't see his Blade in the TV series. I liked him as Blade. I did. I truly did.
I feel like Jaimin Hansu also is kind of a patron saint of your guys' show.
yes.
I love him.
Because
He's
it's interesting.
fantastic.
He's been in a lot of non-franchise stars, but he's also in like both DC and Marvel. He's like one
Because
of
he's
those
just in
people.
everything.
And in the Fast and Furious movies and Furious
yeah.
7. You know,
One of
like
the best Fast and Furious movies, in my opinion.
I mean, he's in Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon franchise. I mean, he's in all the franchises of the Quiet Place franchise. So now he is the franchise guy. But before, he was like kind of, again, one of those people that like was always almost there. You know, because he had this. He was in Constantine as Papa Midnight.
See previous episode of our podcast, Constantine.
Great episode. Because I love Constantine, but hey, you guys might have to run it back because the Constantine 2's is floating around. It's supposed to happen.
I mean, I will believe it when I'm seated in the theater, same as I did for Beetlejuice, which did happen. But when I'm seated in the theater with a bucket of popcorn in my lap, I will believe it.
True that. But Jaimin Hansu, he just fucking rules. I think he
Stargate, Deep Rising, almost previous episode of this podcast, Gladiator. We came out that close, and then Ridley decided to roll up his sleeves. What else we got? Like, God, he's been in so much. Constantine, Beauty Shop, future episode of this podcast, Beauty Shop. Aragon,
The Legend of Tarzan, the 2016 one with Skarsgård.
Absolutely. Seventh
Which
Son.
one?
Was it Alexander? King
Arthur.
Arthur.
It's with Alexander. And funny enough, Legend of Tarzan, I compare it. It's literally Daredevil in the jungle with a ripped Alexander Skarsgård. They literally make Tarzan into Daredevil in that movie. It's kind of crazy.
Oh, also the 2019 Charlie's Angels, another Jaimin Hansu film.
Look at that. Yeah, Jaimin Hansu, patron disenfranchised saint.
we're putting him on the Mount Rushmore right next to
Him
Paul
up there,
Bettany. He's up there.
Yeah.
Oh no, but we do love Jaimin Hansu, and he's really good in this movie, and I want to see him play more villains, like fully formed villains, not like Korath the Pursuer in Guardians of the Galaxy, where he's just kind of like a henchman. Like I like him kind of being the guy, the mastermind calling the shots. Like he's very good at that, and I want to see him get more. He was also in The King's Man. Fuck, The King's Man from 2021. We're not getting another one of those.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yo, he
Man,
was in
he
the he
is-
was in the Blood Diamond. Y'all remember the Blood Diamond?
I saw that movie in theaters.
Yeah,
He's
but
In
right
he
there.
is-
America,
he is
it's all about bling bling. Here, it's all about
franchise
bling
guy.
bang. Yeah,
I hope Jaimin Hansu's bank account's looking nice.
I hope so.
I can't
too.
imagine it wouldn't be. Like he's
Right,
been in
right.
enough stuff that it's at least hit a bit.
Oh
As
my
long as
God.
he's getting
The
residuals, he's
residuals
set.
alone. Yeah,
He was in Aragon also, which was
Yes.
supposed to be a trilogy.
yes, it was based on that book series written by that teenager. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it, and oh no, Gran Turismo is based on a true story. I was like, that's a video game, right? No, that's not the video game
And
one.
it's also a video game.
No, it's the video game.
Is that movie based on the video game?
Yeah.
is it based
No,
on-
well, it's based
Based on
on
the unbelievable, inspiring true story of a team of underdogs. I don't think it's based on the video game.
no. Well, no, it is.
It's based on a player of the video game becoming a driver. Like that's the plot of the movie.
and it's a real thing that happened. It's a real thing that happened, Steve.
Oh, that's weird.
yeah.
Yeah.
Probably still not
So
something
it
we'd
is-
cover.
So it is both a biopic and a video game film
Yeah. It's
Okay.
yeah,
at the
it's
same time.
directed by Neil Blomkamp.
Like you do.
Oh, Neil.
That's who you
We had
assigned to that
such-
task.
We had such high hopes for you, Neil. What happened?
Yeah, well,
I mean, I
Money.
guess Chappie happened.
that's true.
Well, Fant Four Stick happened. That's what happened to him.
Yeah. Although District 9, future episode of this podcast, we will cover it one day.
And he
into
also
that.
directed Chronicle, bringing it back around.
Hey.
I like that movie a lot.
Chronicle rules, except because you also mentioned Chronicle, unfortunately written by a very vile piece of shit, but also somebody who wrote a lot of movies that were intended to be franchises. So
Correct.
kind of interesting how that person would come up a bunch.
And we'll cover Fan Four Stick on the podcast next year as well. It's already on the schedule.
Hooray.
We're
All
coming
these
up on
movies I've
10
been trying
years
to
since
avoid.
Fant Four Stick. That's crazy.
It really is. Yeah.
That's wild.
It's kind of insane. Yeah, it's what a great time to be the Disenfranchised podcast. Really.
For real.
Like really. We've got some really great stuff on the horizon. Because Hollywood just keeps putting this shit out and we are just responding to it. So it's fun. It's a great time. It's a great time to be us. And yeah, man, we covered Push. That's a thing.
The
we
pushing, it happened.
did. The pushing happened
finally.
at long last. 2 years in the making.
Finally.
Finally brought it home.
It's I can finally tick this movie off my podcast bucket list. I got to talk about Push somewhere for
Nice.
an hour and a half. I love it.
And we'll make sure to get Jumper on the schedule just as soon as we can as well. Just wish you would step back from that ledge, my friend.
No,
Yeah,
I'm going off the edge straight into the UK. Boom. Crazy.
That's wild. That's the edge of civilization right there. The UK. DeVaughn, thank you so much for coming back and joining us. We are so glad we were able to get this scheduled as quickly as we were. And yeah, tell us about what's going on at Specter Cinema Club, what you guys have coming up for November, and just anything else you want to plug, man.
Yes, thank you so much. Loved talking about this movie. You can find me at all the usual places: Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd @_daddydisco. You can hear me over on Specter Cinema Club. November, we are covering college horror. So we have a fun slate of on-campus thrillers and one that is also not on campus. So you can check us out over there. And then December, we'll be doing Nick Cage to close out 2024. So we're closing out strong over on Specter Cinema Club. New episodes every Tuesday. And then you can hear me on Pod and Pendulum, sometimes with Mr. Chewy himself. You can hear me. We're doing a VHS Beyond recording tomorrow, so you can hear me over there.
Right on.
But yeah, thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming back. And again, we've got plenty more scheduled for you. We've dropped, I hope, enough teasers on this episode that people will keep coming back. But yeah, and that you'll keep coming back. Most importantly,
it's a series. I got my specific disenfranchised corner.
We've got your lane. We've decided. We've locked you in. And we've got a couple of guests that come on kind of whenever we cover a particular topic. So I'm glad that we've carved your niche out for you. That makes me very happy. We are the Disenfranchised Podcast. You can find us on most forms of social media at DisenfranchPod. Wherever you get your podcasts, make sure you are finding us. And when you do, leave us a nice 5-star rating and review. We will read new reviews on this very podcast, and everyone will hear them, especially if those are on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can drop us a line at disenfranchpod@gmail.com or head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/disenfranchpod, to join for free the official conversation of the Disenfranchised Podcast. Or for $5 a month, you can hear us talk about a wide range of topics, including the episode where we rank the 5 Ghostbusters movies and Steven loses his fucking mind. For just
I think
$5,
you're overselling it.
Not really. Kind of, but not really. But no, go check that out. Disenfranchised, our most recent episode. And yeah, check that out. Please do. Please and thank you. You can find me, Stephen Foxworthy, your host, on various forms of social media at Chewy Walrus. Some of them I use regularly, some of them I don't. Figure it out. Our absent friend Brett Wright, who is awash in Hong Kong, last seen getting into a van with Corey Stoll. We wish him a speedy return, but you can find him on Instagram occasionally at sus_warlock and on Letterboxd at the same handle. Tucker, where can we find you these days?
Steven, we didn't do the box office and we didn't do our star ratings.
Oh,
I gotta say it. We did not do box office, and I did not get to tell you what my star rating was on this movie, and I demand that we rewind and do that.
Let's do that in editing.
Yeah, we can fix it in the edit.
Yeah, sure. I'll totally cut this out and make it right. I'll make you look real good, Steven.
You never do. Why start now?
It's cold.
That's what happens when you let it sit there for an entire hour.
But it's only been an hour. Fuck.
That's enough. Push, the movie from 2009, comes out on February 6th, 2009, which is how you know the studios had high hopes for it, because February is just when all the great movies come out. Usually
great date night movie. Hey, hey girl, you want to go see Push this weekend?
Girl. Then maybe later we can. Never mind. Opening number one, probably would have been the number one date movie of the era. He's Just Not That Into You. Opening at number one to 27.8 million. In second place in its second weekend, Liam Neeson's Taken.
Oh,
yeah. That would be a successful franchise starter.
And that was definitely a word of mouth one too. So everybody was saying, go see Taken. Nobody was going around saying, go see Push.
Right. Taken just pushed right out of the box office. In third place, also opening this week, maybe one of my favorite movies of the year, Coraline.
Yeah, and which just had a very successful anniversary run, which is super crazy. It was what big movie was it? Was it there was a big movie that it like beat out, and it was just like, wow, like look how sad that movie is. Was it the Joker movie?
I mean, look, Joker, it hit number one and then plummeted like a stone.
Yeah, but shout out Coraline.
Yeah, we do stand Coraline. Yeah, Absolutely.
One of my
that
all-time
movie-
faves.
That movie is great. Yeah, probably one of mine too. Really do dig that movie. Tucker, Coraline, thoughts?
It's fine.
All right.
What? Jeez.
I liked it.
Who is
It's
this
all
guy?
right. It's okay.
this
It's all right.
this
It's
guy.
okay.
In fourth place, we have a sequel that I did not expect that we would get. The sequel somebody was asking for, probably Steve Martin, The Pink Panther 2.
There was
In
a
fourth
sequel.
yeah,
place.
nobody-
Yeah,
He did 2 of those? What?
he did too. Right. Another movie that
Oh.
does not
Oh.
exist.
Oh.
And then in fifth place, in its fourth week, down from number 2 the week before, Paul Blart Mall Cop, another one that weirdly got a sequel.
People
Would not
love
have
that
expected
movie.
it to, but they really do. Kevin
Remember
James.
remember when that movie and Observe and Report came out at the
Yep.
in the same year, and it was like, whoa, this is kind of crazy.
Is Observant? I don't think Observe and Report is out yet because it's not on this box.
Or was it like they came out like within a year or two apart? It was like
Yeah.
kind of and people kind of didn't see Observe and Report because they thought it was like another kind of Paul Blart. It's like
Even
one
though
of
it
those
really
things.
was not.
No, not at all.
Very
not at all.
different movie. It's that like Deep Impact Armageddon thing, that Megamind Despicable Me thing, like where you get those
Mhm.
movies that come out just right next to each other and they have essentially the exact same premise, ants
Yeah.
and bugs, but Ants in a Bug's Life, but that was intentional because Katzenberg was trying to like leech off of Disney.
Yeah.
In sixth place, the movie we talked about today, Push, opening at number 6.
Damn.
Rounding out the rest of the top 10, you've got Slumdog Millionaire at number 7. In its 13th week, has grossed about $77 million. Followed by in 8th place, Gran Torino, which in just 9 weeks has already grossed $120 million.
Wow.
You can't stop Clint Eastwood.
Every time someone mentions that movie, I think of I don't remember which movie it was, but there was a time on SNL where they did a recurring sketch where it was like screen tests for people who didn't get the role in very
Right.
famous movies, and Bill Hader was Clint Eastwood, and he had like his pants up to his chest,
Yep.
and he's just like leaning back, and he's like, and whenever somebody says Gran Torino, I think of that movie, and that's basically him in that movie.
Yeah, it is. It really. And then he sings the theme song at the end. Like he
I'll bet.
sings the theme for
He's a
Gran
fantastic
Torino.
singer. He really is.
Sure. I mean, he painted that wagon. Boy howdy.
He's a real good director too sometimes.
In 9th place, we have The Uninvited. What if some people were uninvited? And at the bottom of the top 10, Hotel for Dogs. What if there was a Hotel for Dogs?
Oh, The Uninvited is the American adaptation of Tale of Two Sisters.
Oh, that's right.
That's what that is.
That's right.
Because those were happening a bunch in the late 2000s as well.
Mm-hmm. The J horror, K horror, like surge in
American adaptations. Yeah.
Right.
Whack.
And I bring up number 11 only because I think it might be a movie that you might enjoy, DeVaughn. Underworld 3, Rise of the Lycans.
Yes,
That feels like a very DeVaughn franchise to me.
You know, it's so fascinating because I haven't seen all of them. I still haven't seen like the last 2, but
I've
I have
seen all of them. How have you not?
So I
have I.
had a week where I was gonna like rewatch them. The one I was like gonna start from the beginning and like do them all. But I've seen Underworld 1 and 2 quite often, and I love Rise of the Lycans. What a great idea to be like, hey, let's do the prequel on the other race, the non-vampires in this movie. I think that's so fun. So yes, do love Underworld, Rise of the Lycans.
When are you going to suggest we cover it on Pod and Pendulum? I guess is the next question. And how hard do you think you're going to have to fight Mike to get that on?
I think because we haven't done a ton of action horror over there, so I could see him being on board for that. But I have some other franchises that are gonna for my wheel picks. I have a couple more that are a little bit more important, but I do want to do the Underworld franchise over there at some point.
Hell yeah! All right. So Push opens as we said at number 6 on a budget of $38 million. It earns back 31.8 domestic. Not the return you want to kick off a franchise, as we've said many times. International box office gives us another 17.9, which gives us a grand worldwide gross of just short of 50 million, 49.7 million worldwide. Not a huge multiplier. Would have liked to have seen more. The tomatometer score is a 23%, which does feel a little rude. The critics' consensus, the sci-fi thriller Push is visually flashy, but hyperkinetic and convoluted.
I could see, because obviously, like, Rotten Tomatoes aggregate score. So with the score being that low, I don't think people are not saying it's a 2 out of 10 movie, but I can see a lot of people giving this, like, I could see a lot of people giving this like a 5 out of 10, like almost to a fresh. They're just like, oh, like it's kind of almost there. I could see a lot of people, like, kind of shrug. This is like kind of a shoulder shrug for a lot of critics, I would say. So I can understand why the score is that low. 'Cause I feel like there's just enough people that are like, it's almost there, but so.
And I think this is a very good time to point out, and this is why I don't put a lot of stock in the tomatometer, is Rotten Tomatoes is a binary. It is either fresh or not.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, I don't put a lot of stock in the tomatometer score. I'm more likely to go for the Metacritic score than I am the Rotten Tomatoes score. But that's me. Speaking of the Metacritic score, a 36 on Metacritic. Generally unfavorable reviews from 21.
That seems a
critics.
bit unfair.
Also seems a bit unfair. Tucker, you want to take a stab at the Letterboxd ranking for 2009's Push? What do you think it is? Give us your spread.
I normally do a 4-point spread, but I'm gonna narrow it down, and I'm gonna put this in between a 2.7 and a 3.0.
It's a 2.8, so right on.
Yeah, that's
right on the money.
See, yeah, right. Like I was saying, like I could see a lot of people just being like, it's almost there to being like something, but yeah. So I think unfavorable, but it's whatever.
Yeah, DeVaughn, how do you rate Push out of 5 stars?
So, I mean, if I'm being for real, this is a 3.5 movie out of 5. But again, I think I probably have watched this movie more than anybody, honestly. I don't think anybody has thought about Push as much as me. So this is a
number one Push fan right here.
I'd say so. So in my heart, this is a 4.5 out of 5 for me. Like, I love this movie. I don't know, something about it just always sucks me back in and wanting to go into this world again. I just find it very fascinating. So, like, it's a 4.5, but if, like, this is more of a 3.5, a very shaggy kind of hot mess of a movie.
Okay,
that's I tend to say that same thing verbatim on most straight ups, because a lot of our straight up episodes, the movies aren't great, but I love them for some reason or another. I'll be like, this is objectively like a 2.5, but it's a 5 for me.
Yeah.
So like I totally understand that perspective for sure.
Tucker, what are you giving this one out of 5?
Well, Steven, I wonder if you'd like to give your rating first so that I can transition smoothly back into my socials and get us back where we were.
I thought you were just going to edit the whole thing around, but sure.
Why would I do that?
Right. Why would our editor edit? Of course. You're right.
If I had time and you paid me, I'd probably do that. But
yeah.
Steven, I got kids.
You have access to the PayPal account. Like, you can pull funds if you need to.
Okay, we have that on recording. So no legal action can be taken against me.
You hear that, HR?
Yeah. He's like, I have all the money. It's all mine.
All? No. I said you have access.
Okay.
It's going to be a 3 for me. Would probably have been a 2.5, but the world building kind of saves it for me a little bit. It's the thing I enjoy most about this movie, other than the performances. So, yeah, it kind of just pushes it, like, in the opposite way as DeVaughn was saying earlier. Kind of just pushes it slightly over the edge for me.
For sure.
Now, for me, I'd like to start by saying, usually when a film has potential but it doesn't live up to it, I find that endearing. Stuff like Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2. stuff like that. I really love that movie because of just how much potential some of those ideas have, even though the film does not really realize it as well as it should. But this movie kind of, it's the same deal, except it frustrates me instead of endears me to the film. So I think this is, it hurts me in the heart to say it, but I think this is a 2.5 for me. I'm usually not the guy who lands the lowest on something,
Yeah,
because
you're
I
not.
tend to be somebody who can find like the good things and the fun things and like forget about the bad things. But this one for me, it's just there's too much potential for me that was just wasted for one reason or another, and it was very frustrating film for me, very frustrating. But you can find me on Instagram and YouTube at IceNineO'Nine. That's ICENINE, the number 0 and the number 9. Also, we got Tuck Mugs, of course, Tuck_Mugs. I think if you become a devoted fan of Tuck Mugs, I decided this in my head earlier today, that you are a Tuck Mugger. And I think that's probably the best way to describe fans of Tuck Mugs, if those even exist. DeVaughn, are you going to send us a guest mug? What's up with that? Send us a guest mug, dude.
Am I
You
gonna
into
get?
that?
I'm gonna get guest mugged. What? You're
Well,
gonna tuck
yes,
mug
we
me?
will. I mean, see, now that you say it that way, it sounds even more perverse. No, are you familiar with Tuck Mugs?
No.
Well, let me tell you about Tuck Mugs. I have a page on Instagram called Tuck Mugs. Again, that's Tuck_Mugs. And it is a page on Instagram where I just post mugs in my collection. And I write a little blurb about maybe where that mug came from, or maybe what it means to me, some kind of story related to the mug. And then I will also inform everyone what is inside of the mug at the time of the photograph. And that's pretty much the format. And we have guest mugs all the time.
Oh, okay. All right.
And I really like it when our guests are able to send us a guest mug. So no pressure. You're not
No,
legally bound to do so.
it is. You
Like
have
other guests.
You have pushed the idea into
Oh.
my mind.
Oh,
You have put it in there. So at some point, I'm gonna be out in the world, and a mug will speak to me, and then I will grab it, and then I will send it to you.
there you go. And it can be a mug you already have. You could be at a diner and you're like, this mug is cool that I'm drinking out of. Let me tell people that I just sat down here and looked at this mug and thought it was cool.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
It's
also a
gonna
thing.
happen at some point. You're gonna just receive a mug in the mail, and it
not
will
to
have found you.
not to devalue the invitation, but it's actually open to anyone. Anyone can submit a guest mug.
Not just
Tuck
guests of this
Mugs.
podcast.
No,
Although
the guest
several-
in guest mug is not because they are guests of the show. It's because there's a mug that is guesting on the page.
We've had
A guest of the
several
page.
guests of this podcast submit mugs.
That's true.
Ian Toohey, or Evan Toohey.
Yeah.
Evan's
Good old
his name.
Jimmy.
Jimmy.
Good old
I
Jimmy.
know him as Jimmy, and I forget his first name. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, his
Ariel-
brother Ian did submit one
There we go.
as well.
That's why he's not been a guest on the podcast. Ariel Power Schaub, past and future guest, has submitted a mug. Andrew Greeting submitted a mug before he was even a guest on this
JP
podcast.
Leck has
So
submitted a
JP
mug
Leck
as well.
And of course, both Brett and I have submitted guest mugs as well. So it's all
But
in the family.
anybody is free to do it. Just you can DM it to us on the Instagram, or you can email it to disenfranchisepod@gmail.com. Just if you're not familiar with the format, check out the page and look at a couple posts and you'll get it.
You will.
Just send us a photo and tell us about the mug and what's inside it. It's just that easy.
Okay.
It's just that easy. I'd also like to give a shout out to my previous coworker and good friend Kyle. He revealed to me yesterday during a text message that our podcast is one of his main weekly podcasts that he listens to. He's devout to it, you might say. So that's very thrilling. That makes me happy.
Hi,
And I just
Kyle.
wanted to shout him out and say that that we appreciate that. We appreciate the listen. And, you know, hey, man, if you ever have anything to say, go to our Patreon and put something in those comments.
Yeah.
For sure.
And that is our episode on 2009's Push. DeVaughn, once again, thank you so much for being here. We were absolutely thrilled to have you back. And
As always.
we will have you back again. It's in the books. It's on the cards. It's going to happen.
I have pushed my voice into your listeners' ear holes, and I'm going to do it again.
You will.
I will.
Whether they like it or not. But let's be honest, they all love
fucking
it.
do it again.
This has been the Disenfranchised Podcast for my absent co-host Brett Wright, my present co-host Tucker, and our very special guest DeVaughn Taylor. I'm your host Stephen Foxworthy, saying until next time.
We all better do something quick because I'm getting sick of drawing dead bodies.